Welcome to the Moon Collective Sanctuary. I'm Dr. Lydia Luna, and I invite you to join me on a journey of self-discovery, healing, and transformation as we explore the depths of our inner and outer world to unlock our truest potential. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Moon Collective Sanctuary podcast. I'm Lydia Luna, a clinical psychologist and founder of the Moon Collective Sanctuary. And I'm so excited for today's guest, Lauren Boasberg, an LMFT and EMDR therapist. And today we're going to be talking about IFS, internal family systems. So thank you for being here today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, Lauren. Tell me about your journey and what led you here to do this type of work.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful to be here. And so thank you for having me on. I have a very interesting story. I was raised in the San Fernando Valley, and I had two parents and dogs and a brother, and everything seemed like normal from the outside. But I had these grandparents who survived the Holocaust. And my grandfather, at a very young age 7 actually, started telling me all the different stories that he experienced, which basically means he expressed all of the different traumas he went through.
So he told you all this at a young age?
I was 7 years old when it started. I'll never forget the time. I was sitting on his lap, and he started to tell me everything that happened to him. And a part of me was really happy and excited to hear it because I wanted to know him. And then there were many parts of me that were horrified and terrified. And so I kind of entered into this existential crisis at age 7, where I realized that there were very evil people in the world. And I didn't understand why. I couldn't understand at any age, really, how such evils could exist. It's like the kid being afraid of the boogeyman or something, or, monsters. These were real monsters. So that's kind of who I am. That's the beginning of my journey. And so I, was in a lot of pain as a child and very deeply wounded.
I wonder at that age, how were you even consolidating or living with that?
I was disassociated most of the time. I think that I used food. No, I know that I used food as my first drug. In Judaism, in the Jewish tradition, we use food for lots of things. I went and turned towards food. But I remember I was always emotional as a child. And I remember people telling me, you're so sensitive. You're so sensitive, which is interesting because I learned at a young age in my family, it was not okay to feel or express how I felt.
And I think sensitivity is actually a superpower because it really heightens your experience in the world, and we can use it as a positive, right?
Well, they did not believe that. So I learned at a very young age that I needed to manage, and I'll explain that later, how it relates to internal family systems, but I needed a part to show up to kind of shut me down because it wasn't okay for me to feel like that. Even my grandmother would say, why are you so sensitive? So anyways, I knew I was sensitive as a child, and I turned to food to shut down the trauma of what happened to us as a family, really. And as I got older, I turned to drugs and alcohol to, shield myself from this existential pain, essentially. And I just had a lot of experiences in my life where I tried to hide from everything. It wasn't until I was about 25 years old that I started to want to, I got sober and I wanted to shift and change and start to really be present for my life. But I always knew I wanted to be a therapist. In graduate school, I remember my teacher said to all of us, who made you a therapist? It was a great question.
Yes.
And I said, my Papa Sam. I was his therapist. And I loved it. And I wouldn't take it back I would never get emotional. I would never take that back. And I was too young to learn, about that.
Yeah. And I imagine his intention was to pass on history and legacy and understanding.
I don't know. I think he didn't have an intention. I think he was disassociated. I think that, well, no, he wasn't disassociated. My grandmother was disassociated. She was totally disconnected. He was more activated. See, coming from the Holocaust, a lot of people had something called survivor's guilt. He had the worst case of survivor's guilt. He had no one that survived. So he didn't understand why he survived. So I think he was processing it. I was like his EMDR therapist at 7 years old. So anyways, that's how I got into it. And I knew I wanted to be a therapist. And so I always knew that.
Yeah. So then you started to focus on EMDR, and then that also led you to this IFS model and the work. So maybe share about how you were intrigued to practice EMDR and then incorporate IFS.
Well, let me just tell you a little bit about if that's okay to just beforehand. So it didn't start with EMDR. It actually I started my journey as a therapist at a place called Beit Teshuvah, which, it stands for House of Return, which is cool because I'm going to tell you in the end a little bit about something that relates to that. So remember, and it was an addiction treatment center. And I started learning to be a therapist there. And I worked with families. So I got to do kind of systems work there. And I loved the work until I didn't love it anymore. It's very intense, heavy work. And I realized I left Beit Teshuvah. I went on to different treatment centers. But I realized that there was something happening that I couldn't get to. And that was the trauma. That was the deeper stuff that I couldn't access by talking about it. So the last treatment center I was at, I just decided I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. I needed to learn more. I was done with that piece of my work. And I had a friend who was doing EMDR, and I decided to learn it. The minute I learned the modality, I fell in love with it. And I have done it ever since. But something happened. I noticed something, which you do when you do EMDR. You notice everything. It's all about noticing.
Yeah.
I noticed that things were coming up. It felt like parts of people, for sure, parts of people were coming up to tell me something in the sessions with them. And parts were blocking people from healing. And I needed to know more. And so I started in my consultation to become certified, found out that everybody that had been doing EMDR as long as, 20 years or however long, all was implementing ego state or IFS work with the EMDR. And it became clear why that was.
Why was that?
Okay. So because although I love the modality and I think it's perfect just the way it is, these were people. And everybody, and so IFS, this is probably a good time to explain it.
Yeah.
IFS basically says the whole idea behind it is that we all have different parts of ourselves, that we don't just have one mind. We have these different parts of us that show up to help us survive in the world. And so I was seeing all of those parts. So here I am working with someone on like a traumatic event. But it wasn't just the traumatic event. It was like I'm meeting all of their parts that were locked up, parts that were protecting them. All of a sudden, it's like I'm doing family therapy with them in the room. But I'm trying to just get to the trauma. So I learned early on there was something going on. I'll explain more about that. But I knew I had to implement this work. So I started to read the books about it and, learn as much as I possibly could from people, from, CEUs, everything. And it's been a journey. But now I honestly say I could not do this work without the IFS. And, but maybe let me explain it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Just really explain it so
I think that
people
would be
can
good.
understand.
Yes. Like, what are the different parts
It's hard
of
to
us?
explain. So, or let me just say this. I noticed it's hard to grasp at first, at least it was for me. But don't worry about the terminology because it'll hopefully I can make as much sense as possible. But so basically it says that we don't just have one mind. We have different parts inside of our mind, essentially, with different feelings, thoughts, body sensations, and behaviors. Okay. So it's as if all of separate people are within us, but not like Sybil, not like a disassociation central, not like, there are people that have dissociative identity disorder, but all of us have these different parts of ourselves. And we have parts that show up that have a lot of pain, like my little 7-year-old who witnessed and still today carries with her a lot of that trauma that was passed down.
And earlier you said you even felt that still as you talk about it.
Because that's passed down from generations. It's in my bones, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And so we call those exiled parts in IFS, parts that hold the pain. In EMDR, I'm actually trying to get to the exiled parts because those are the ones I'm doing reprocessing with. But let me tell you something. You can't access those parts unless the protector parts allow you to. So we have manager parts, we have protector parts, we have parts that keep us from accessing the pain of the exiled parts. So their job, every part has a job. Their job is to make it so those don't come up. And so, I've developed many managers along the way. And then we have firefighter parts, which are the strongest parts that exist. Their job is to annihilate any access to any type of pain, anything you want to avoid. Their job is to completely annihilate anything, not to make life manageable, but to annihilate pain, those parts that hold the pain.
Yeah, to put out the feelings like a firefighter would put out fires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the strongest form of manager protector there is, or the firefighter parts. Now we see those a lot in addiction. And I worked in addiction and, a lot of us have worked in the field. We're working with those parts in addiction. But in EMDR, I would notice that I was ready to help the person work through their stuff and the target that they wanted to work through. But there was a part that came up that says, no, we're not going there, Lauren. Don't even start to go there. So that's how I started doing this work. So I was met with their managers, with their protector parts. And I had to figure out how to work with them because I could never gain access to the pain unless they let me.
And so this is a good point. It's like, how do we identify the managers, the firefighters? Essentially, their job is to protect. So the intention is good. It's well-meaning, but it's blocking us from growth. So how does one identify and work with them?
Well, I think I should maybe give you an example.
Yeah, let's
because
do
this
it.
would be a good idea.
Absolutely.
I like to learn from examples. I feel like, that's how a good way to learn something. So I'm going to get vulnerable now. I love vulnerability.
Yes.
Right? It
Yes.
builds connection.
That's right.
Brene Brown
That's
says.
being authentic.
Yeah, that's who I am. So it happened quickly that I decided we were going to come on, right? It just so happened today. And I was excited. And there was a part of me, literally, that was nervous because I didn't notice this till later, but I was like a little hypomanic almost, like really wanting to just double check over everything I know, everything I've learned. There was a part of me that was very nervous because I was noticing that my behavior was very hypomanic. I was trying to ingest every piece of information that I already knew because I do it every day. But no, gotta go through it all and double check and triple check. And I was like a little OCD. And all of a sudden, at like 12 o'clock at night, I was like, I checked in and I'm going to tell you how I do it. I said to myself, what is going on here? 'Cause it's not my normal state. I closed my eyes. What's going on? Realize there's a part of me that's very, very anxious. What am I anxious about? Why am I looking through stuff I already know? And why am I feeling like I need to be this, do this weird behavior. Okay, I went inside listening. There was this part that showed up, perfectionist part, which I don't see much of, by the way, dormant, that wanted to make sure I wasn't embarrassed. I got the chills just now when I said that, because I guess it was really worried that I may be embarrassed if I didn't read everything 1,000 times and,
Yeah.
whatever that cuckoo stuff is.
Right.
And so I was able to listen and go, oh, thank you so much for telling me. You know what? I'm now tired. And I feel much better now. I've got this, but I see and I understand what that was about. And that was one of my manager parts that came up to protect me from being embarrassed. Now, you and I both know being embarrassed is okay because that builds resilience, right? And humanness is being embarrassed. But this part, I guess, is petrified of it. And so that's how I work with parts with people, is just closing my eyes, having them close their eyes, go in, ask questions, figuring out the thoughts, the feelings, the body sensations, what it wants you to know, why it's showing up. And I find that in IFS, basically, it's all about compassion. So listening to your parts with compassion and perspective and trying to understand them and not shame them, just get information and understanding from them. And once you do that, parts soften, like immediately they soften.
Yeah, that's the same thing that I've had to do through this project. It's like face my perfectionistic tendencies so much because I'm literally looking at myself, and even metaphorically, I think it's both. Like I'm being forced to look at myself in a different way, and it's letting me know, like, at first, it's really difficult. I'll look at the video edit the first time and I'm like, oh my God, like, no. And then the second time, it's like, okay, it's not so bad. And then the third time, I'm like, okay, I'm liking myself more. But it's like, it's work, to face ourselves inwardly or outwardly and see the things that we like and dislike. But also not for me, my job is to or my intention is not to get stuck in what I don't like. It's more like, what do I want to change from what I dislike? And what can I not change and have to learn to accept and love? Because we are imperfect. That's human nature. Like we cannot be perfect. It's almost like part of the human experience is to enjoy and embrace our imperfections because it makes us who we are. It gives us character, quirkiness, whatever it is. Like it's who we are and it makes us different. Imagine if we were all like the same in a box and you know what I mean? That'd be so boring.
Well, that's self-energy, by the way.
Yeah.
So I don't think I mentioned this before.
Well, I was going to ask you if we can talk about the self, right?
So that's yourself. That's your highest version of yourself. And so, no, perfectionism doesn't exist in self-energy. It doesn't even go there at all. It's just like your purest form, who you are, and, with perspective and calmness and, sensitivity and just, there's no fear, no anxiety there. You're just who you are. So, but the problem with these manager parts, protector parts, is they keep us from our highest self. They keep us from we can't do anything if we can't access our self-energy or the universe self-energy out there. We can't connect to anything spiritual. So that's why, you're able to notice when you're not in your authentic self or your highest self and try to work with it. But I didn't know, believe this, I did not know what was happening until 12 o'clock at night. It took me hours before I realized, because you want to know what? I knew all that stuff I looked up. Like it was why this part must think that I don't know any, our parts do not have the download. They don't have the download. Now imagine if you're going through life with a part that doesn't have all the information leading the way.
Yeah. So the manager then manages all of these, makes sure that the exiles don't come too close, right, to the surface, because the exiles are the ones that feel a lot. They're the ones that carry the pain. Yeah, vulnerable.
So the manager's job is to keep you together, right? So for example, you have to go to work. You have to talk to people. You have to do this anyways because this is what you want to do. So you have to get past your anxiety. So you have managers coming up to block you from accessing it so you can function. right?
Yeah. And then the firefighters, they come in should the exiles get close and you feel the feelings. My understanding is they're more impulsive and reactive. So they come and like shut it down. Any negative feelings they try.
They try.
Yeah.
Oh no, they don't try. They are the best. They annihilate all things. So those guys look like disassociation is a fire. I mean, it's like completely shut down. You can't access anything. You're disconnected. Like OCD, major firefighter for me. I have an OCD part. Eating disorders, those are really hard clients to access their pain. They firefighters come in and annihilate all pain. But with the pain comes the spirit. I mean, these parts of us that we have exiled, by the way, we have chosen to put them away because of the world, because of whatever. These parts want to be freed. They're trapped in space and time.
And so maybe we can keep talking about the self now, because although these parts are kind of like doing all this work, at the core of us, there is this self. And it sounds even like a higher self. So can we talk more about that?
So self energy is a trip because I find that some people come in and they don't even know what I'm talking about. It's as if I'm speaking Chinese to them. They've been operating from a false part their entire life, and they don't even know. They have never experienced anything that felt good. Okay? These are people that have complex PTSD. They were abused as a children or neglected or both, and they didn't trust anyone. And everyone's let them down. And they never had any reflection of anything other than the darkness. And so they're really trapped and lost. Those folks need a lot of help. They need a lot of work around accessing who they are, even who they would like to be. They're totally shut down.
I'm even thinking if you can right now share for the listeners what is complex trauma. Some may not know.
Yeah, so it's just, people that have had, trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma, early childhood. They have a lot of attachment problems, and not that they're borderline or anything, but they have wounds, young wounds, many young little wounds, and they didn't feel safe, and it's a complex type of trauma to treat. It doesn't happen. It's not like I'm working on someone who was in a car accident or they were held up at gunpoint. This is like no one ever showed up for them. Or if they did show up for them, they were horrific and they never mirrored anything positive back. So they have nothing. It's almost like they don't have an internal, from my experience working with these clients, it feels like they didn't develop an internal locus of control, which means they didn't develop self, they don't know who they are. So they don't know their spirit. Does that make sense? So it takes a lot of work. I love those clients. But the highest self, just in the way I see it, is like your access to your truth before you were exiled. Before, it's like the little joy you see in a little kid when they're running. That's the self to me, And there's nobody online protecting or managing, and you're just you, and you're just okay. And you have a knowing, kind of like a divine knowing and an intuition and perspective and clarity. It's just a place of knowing, really. That's how I describe the self.
Yeah, it's like calm, compassionate, wise.
Well, those are some of the things, but there's a lot of other characteristics. And to be quite honest, IFS describes those characteristics belonging to the self. But I actually like to ask people how they know and what their characteristics work for them, because everyone's different. And yes, you're going to see a lot of, you're going to see, number one thing I notice when people are in self energy and have access is they have perspective. I work with clients who have that black and white thinking and they, very polarized. The minute they're able to say, well, wait a minute, I see that, but I also see this. their own self.
So for those people that maybe experience complex trauma or just haven't had the opportunity, haven't been able to access this part, the self, how would you say, what's like a practical way to access that part
That's
of us?
important. So it's not a part, by the way, which is
Okay.
it's tough. I always say that by
Okay.
accident, and I know it's not. It's not a part. It is us.
It's so getting in touch
It's our
with our
truth.
essence.
It's our truth.
Yeah.
It's who we are. It's just our truth. We haven't been split off yet. See, we go through life. I just have to say this because I think it's important because it's the journey of it all. We go through life, and I think we all remember those moments when all of a sudden we learned we had to put something away. I remember them. Do you?
Yeah.
I'll never forget my
absolutely.
moments. I
Yeah.
remember the first time I ate a whole box of granola bars.
As
I'll
soon
never
as you
forget.
ask that, it's like I'm getting all these like moments.
Yeah. Do you
replayed
want to
in my
share
mind.
one?
No, it's just like, I had like a lot of childhood trauma. And so for me, that's the first thing that comes up that I knew. Like I was a child, there was a lot of helplessness and all that. So I think I have understood how I've overcompensated for all of that. And I'm working through that. I still do, even though I feel like I have, but I know I still do. But it's like all of that stuff comes to mind of like stuff that I've had to like keep in check, like make sure we're
Exiled.
good.
Go to your room.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wisdom.
But before all that, there were these moments where we just were.
Yeah. Just work.
We
just
don't live in that
being.
place. We don't live in that place. And if anyone tells you we do, come on. We're not living there. We're going up and down like the machine at the, in the ER. Up, down, up, down. And we try to reconnect. But how do I help people? Well, that's a good question.
Connecting to or accessing. What's the terminology? Accessing the self, connecting to the
Yes,
self?
yeah, all of it's whatever
Okay.
works for you. I mean, I know what I've learned, but I always adapt it to what works for me because otherwise I can't do it. But what I do with people is in my work with them, I can't start with the self energy stuff because a lot of people have no idea. They look at me like I'm crazy. So it looks like this. The protectors show up first. The manager protector parts always show their face first. Then we know we can get to the parts that hold the pain. Then in doing that work where we're in the pain, they finally get their brain back online again through the EMDR and IFS. And they're able to have moments where they have perspective, where they remember joy, where they feel hope, where all of a sudden something goes on and they can access their truth or even a piece of it. Now, how do I help people who still don't know what that means? We talk about in EMDR, we use the term resourcing. Resourcing is helping people find things that feel good, that calm them down or, help them when they're not okay. I don't call it that. I call it what brings you joy. And I spend a lot of time with people throughout their whole work, but also in the beginning, figuring it out. What do you like to do? What makes you happy? Spend a lot of time with people figuring out what they like and what makes them happy. Now, side note, people that have complex PTSD look at me like I'm nuts when I say happy. Happy?
Isn't that interesting that it could be so difficult to even know what that is, especially the older we get? I feel like that's more of a thing where it's like we've lost touch with that.
Well, they didn't even ever know what that was. So that's a joke because to them, it depends on the human being, but that could be a trigger for some people. So I just say, what feels good when you do it? Most people have at least one thing, even if it's a firefighter part that feels good. Like, I love to binge. Fine, we'll go with that. There's something that when you do it, it feels good. Okay. And we build on that. And through the work, I try to, every time ask them, what did you do? What do you like to do? I bring in oils and I have lots of things in my office, but I listen closely to people and see from talking to them and getting their history, what they like. And then I try to encourage them to do more of those things. So I ask them between sessions, what happened this week? What did you do? Did you connect with your self energy? Did you do anything that brought you joy? So I'm always trying to see, did they connect? In EMDR, you have to repair between sessions. And repairing in terms of IFS looks like connecting with self. Did you do something that felt good? Now, to you and I, that can look different. Feeling good may be just like laying down for someone, or it may be cooking, or who knows. but helping people figure out what feels good, it's from that place that they can connect to self, from my experience, to feel joy, have moments, even just moments of like being satiated or feeling joy or enjoying something.
I feel like this kind of like resonates with even spirituality and spiritual awakening. I love that it has that component to it, or that flavor, that it's like our power is within. It's connecting to that, but it's noticing what is blocking that, what is getting in the way, and attending to that, because these are wounds that, we got from experiences, from life, from traumas. Yeah, and even from our ancestors, like you just mentioned. So it's just so much that we carry with us, and how great to like have some concepts, different concepts. This is what I love about psychology, by the way, that there's all of these different modalities and theories, and we can use the one that really resonates with us. And this is why I love IFS, because it has this component, the connecting to the self.
What I love about it is it's humanistic, which is just another way of saying what you said. I've always felt that people have everything that they need within them. They just may be confused or lost or don't know. And it's my job to help them find themselves, connect to their self. So when I found IFS, I thought, oh my God, this is totally humanistic. It's not just humanistic. It's a mix of a lot of different, modality or types of therapy, but it's very a sacred work because, and so is EMDR. EMDR, I help the person get to go on their journey and they come up with everything on their own. So it's beautiful work. I don't do anything except help them on the journey, but they come up with everything. IFS as well. It's their parts. They're getting to know their parts. They're learning how to not shame their parts and how to feel their parts. What's beautiful about this is it's similar. I don't know if you've done family therapy. If you've done family therapy. So in family therapy, it's the same kind of thing. It's external though. In internal family systems, it's like your own family inside. And so you're helping, the goal really is to get yourself, to be the parent, the one in charge, and to kind of reintegrate, change everybody's roles in the system, understand the roles, help the ones that need unburdening. So unburdening is just like releasing any feelings, thoughts, body sensations, things that they've been holding on to that have been hard, and finding out what roles they want to play. Now, the cool thing is about IFS is parts never go away. Now, this is interesting. I forgot to mention this. In EMDR, the way I learned it is you figure out where the person is stuck. You work through the memories or whatever you're targeting. It could be anything you're targeting. And then they're supposed to be unstuck. Now, it works, but let me explain how IFS, it's a little different in IFS because I may help you clear or move through something that disturbed you, but the part doesn't go away. Let me give you an example. I think you said earlier, you have trauma from your childhood, right? So you may have worked through those memories, but the little one's still in there, isn't she? She won't ever go away. And maybe she's unburdened, meaning she can't connect to the memories or doesn't feel them, but her energy, she was trapped there. She was created. You can't just make something go away that was created. You can shift a memory, but I feel like our exiled parts are like spirits trapped. That sound crazy, but like spirits trapped in time almost. And once the stuff that bothers them is gone, the memories, the traumatic memories, but they're still like little beings essentially.
Yeah.
So it's our job to take care of our parts.
Right.
And so, but that doesn't mean the EMDR doesn't work. It just means now you're left with your parts. So what that looks like is you may have a moment where you notice one of your parts shows up, but then it's your job to parent that part. Like I did last night when I said, I know this stuff. Thanks for being so worried about me. And I understand why you showed up. But let's go to bed now.
And for me, mine can come up in the way that I don't want to trust people, or I have difficulty trusting people. But then I tell that part of me, like, I have discernment. I can create boundaries. I can bring safety to myself, So it's like, this kind of makes me think of like shadow work too,
It's
right? We
totally
bring them out of
similar.
the shadow, we bring them to the light, and then we attend to them and see what they need, what they want, and we give that to them.
Except I used to love the shadow work, and I still think it's really cool. But it's what's interesting about IFS is you want to, your goal is to kind of like unblend. What that means is, and this can get kind of confusing, so bear with me. But don't worry about the terminology. But if you were this like, your authentic self as like 6 months old or 2 years old or something, or a year old, and then someone scared you, like you were yelled at, which happens. We all get yelled at, right? Someone scares you. And then an exiled part shows up. Well, then essentially our parts blend. So an exiled part shows up, a part that's in pain, and we realize we have to put it away. Another one shows up to help us survive and experience still being alive in the world. Like I still have to find myself. I have to come back to something. So then our manager part, our parts that show up to protect us from our parts that hold the pain, they blend with our self energy. What that means is we kind of lose touch with our highest self. We lose touch with our self energy in that moment. And so IFS says we have to disconnect, unblend from those parts in order to gain access to our self energy again. So there's an unblending that will always keep happening over and over again, at least for me and everyone I've ever worked with. And that's part of the journey. It doesn't happen once. It's like, oh, one of my parts came up, didn't notice. What happened? And in the what happened, that's the unblending. It's like reclaiming your spirit self again, almost. At least that's how it feels. Does that make sense? It's kind of confusing, but we have to disconnect to see it, to have perspective. And that's hard. But if you practice it, it gets easier and easier and easier. And there's zero shame involved in it. It's like, oh, that's just my insecure part that had me up till 12. The most important thing, I think, there's a lot of important things, but is that the goal here is to connect with yourself, know who you are, experience that, so you can detect, notice when you're having an exiled part shows up, or when a manager or protector, any kind of protector part shows up. Now, you're not going to probably notice it right away, but the goal is to notice it as fast as you can so you can understand and get information and give it, take care of it. So you don't have to split off into all these parts so that yourself can take over and be in control and be in charge. And your parts that were in pain, once they're unburdened, know that you're going to take care of them.
Yes. So if our tendency is to suppress, to push away, it's like building a new relationship with these parts because there's something to gain from it.
Yes, and letting them know that you're going to take care of them, even the protectors, because they're going to be really confused as to what their job is now. Well, if perfectionism is everything, and you're going to, what am I supposed to do now? So they have to be involved in figuring out what to do now with that part of you. And all the parts you have to get, it's going to get confusing, but basically they're now your babies. You have to take care of them, kind of. And you have to, and they have to know that you're going to take care of them and that there's always a way back to self. And I think that that's beautiful because it's very humanistic. It's like, it's not like you're done and you're healed. You're always going to have parts. You're always going to have struggles. You just have to know who's who and why they need you to know. Okay, so there's two types of clients that I've worked with that I find are the most interesting and of the hardest to allow me access to their exiled parts. And these are people who have eating disorders or people who have OCD, have OCD parts or eating disorder parts, I should say. They're complex and they have many protectors keeping them from coming anywhere near them. But you know what? It just means to me, they're so scared. So it's really holy work and exciting. And each person is different. And each journey with each part is different. And it's exciting work, really. But yes, the goal is to just get everybody knowing their parts so they can take care of their healed system.
So as the first step, you said is to connect to the protectors.
Well, as a therapist.
What about for people that may not be in therapy right now? How can they start today, like a practical step?
So whenever you're feeling, okay, I'm talking to you, if ever you're feeling something come up, anything really, anxiety, depression, fear, confusion, whatever it is, it could be anything that doesn't feel good at all or is concerning or something you'd like to work on. Close your eyes, go inside and listen. See if you can ask or listen to the part that's showing up. A part could be a sensation in your body. You just need a way in. So it could be, for me, I'm aware of my thoughts a lot. Not so much my body, more so my thoughts. That's my way in. Like last night, it was like these thoughts were not my thoughts. Like I don't know what I'm doing thoughts. So that was a way in, right? But if it's someone who's in their body all the time, maybe they go into their body and go, what's going on? Like, what do you want? Why are you showing up? And what do you want me to know? And if you can just listen and close your eyes and listen, you'll get a lot of information. I would say listen to any thoughts that are coming up, any feelings that you're aware of, and any body sensations, and listen from a non-judgmental place. So not from a judgment place, but from a, just compassionate, just want to understand curiosity, from a place of curiosity. Then you can write them down. But again, you're not necessarily doing what they say. You're just it's as if you're listening to someone, a friend, and you're making space to understand. And that's a really good place to begin. That helps the person unblend, separate from this thing that's showing up so they can understand it more and gain access to their highest self, their self energy. And so it also takes shame away. Because oftentimes when we're stuck or in pain, there's sometimes shame attached to it. But if you can see it with love and compassion and perspective, a part of you, it melts the shame completely away. Yeah. So that's a good place to start.
What you just said right now, I felt was like super profound. So thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful and a good takeaway. So Lauren, we're getting ready to wrap up. Are there any last words that you would like to leave our listeners with?
I just want to say that regardless of what people have been through, or regardless of what you have been through, if I'm talking to the listeners, there's always a way back to yourself, literally. And I think that gives people hope because a lot of people come to me, I'm the last house on the block, and they just feel like there's no hope. There's always hope and there's always a way back. Even if it's just in your perception, there's always a way back.
I love the work that you're doing. I'm curious, maybe share, where can people find you? Are you taking new clients?
So I have an office in Encino and I see people in person and then virtually on Zoom. I'm on Instagram and my handle is at EMDR Therapist LA. And my website is laurenboasberg.com.
Awesome.
Very simple.
Yes, and we'll have your information linked as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for all of this information. I know actually somebody will find it useful. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And thank you to the listeners. Thank you for joining me on the Moon Collective Sanctuary. Remember, your journey to a more fulfilling and empowered life continues beyond this episode. Until next time, may you remember who you are and stay open to embrace all that life has to offer. Ready to dive deeper into your journey of self-discovery? Join us for a transformative retreat at the Moon Collective Sanctuary. Visit mooncollectivesanctuary.com to learn more and book your spot.